Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Good morning. Great to be with you on a Monday, June 15th, as we start out another week here at EWTN's Catholic Connection. We have a great lineup for you this morning. We are going to start with our very own Matt Swaim of the Sunrise Morning Show, of course, and the Journey Home. He joins us on Monday mornings every week to highlight the Journey Home program. And what a story he has today. And Peter Gagnon mentioned this on Friday in our Inside Word segment. It is about a deacon couple, formerly Jehovah's Witnesses. What a journey that must have been. He will give us some highlights. That's why we called this segment the Journey Home Highlights. That comes up at about 16 minutes past the hour, pastor news and weather. And then we have the dynamic Jennifer Roback Morse, Dr. Jen as I call her. We are going to be talking about why men matter and her wonderful program, her wonderful ministry, which is entitled the Ruth Institute, is saying that Pride Month is out, authentic masculinity is in. She says people are fed up with pride. I'm also fed up with mainstream society bad-mouthing men. My entire adult life, I've heard that masculinity is toxic, men are mean, and dads are unnecessary. So this is a great topic, especially as we go into Father's Day weekend. So looking forward to that. And of course, we'll wrap up on a Monday, as we always do in the first hour, with our special guest and our scripture verse of the week, our very own Gail Buckley with Catholic Scripture Study International. Hour number 2, another dynamo, Bill Donahue, the president of the Catholic League, will be joining us. Kind of along the same lines in terms of the discussion with Jen. He's talking about how gay pride is losing steam, and he'll also talk about the attack on fatherhood. So this is a great combination of these two experts on what's happening in society, in our culture, joining us during this Sacred Heart of Jesus month as we recognize it in the Catholic Church. Hour number 2 for 2 cents. I just want to let you know that my new book, Volume 2, of Italy's Shrines and Wonders, published by EWTN, is coming out tomorrow. I'm so excited. Pre-sales have been going very well, but it is available now, and you can find it at the EWTN Religious Catalog. I believe it's the book of the month. I'm very excited about it, and I want to talk about St. Francis being the saint of peace in relationship to the breaking news that's going on, pending a deal with Iran that is expected, hopefully, to be signed on Friday. So that is our program for today and a Monday. Hope you can stay tuned for the entire 2 hours. First on EWTN Radio, hour number 1, and then hour number 2, of course, on EWTN's Radio Extra. Weather-wise, we have scattered severe thunderstorms capable of damaging wind gusts and some hail that's expected this afternoon and evening from the upper Ohio River Valley into the northeast, and also from the Appalachians into the mid-Atlantic states. Excessive rainfall, they're saying, from heavy thunderstorms producing areas of flash flooding from southern New Mexico into the western and northern Gulf, and that will happen all the way into Wednesday. Again, that's a look at your weather now and your rundown. It is 3 minutes past the hour. It's time to check the news on a Monday morning, June 15th, here on EWTN. So let's get started. President Trump says the United States has reached an agreement with Iran, marking a significant development in ongoing diplomatic efforts. Hira Mustafa reports, meanwhile, Pakistan is playing a key role in mediating the deal, and they say the work is not finished yet.
Now even the most toughest phase begins, and that would be the implementation of the peace deal and the confidence-building measures between the U.S., Iran and Pakistan will remain engaged with the regional players.
In a Sunday post on Truth Social, the president declaring the removal of the U.S. naval blockade on Iran, allowing the Strait of Hormuz to reopen. The deal will initiate a 60-day period for further discussions and negotiations on Iran's nuclear program, including discussions on enriched uranium stockpiles. Pakistan's prime minister says the agreement is set to be formally signed on June 19th in Switzerland. The signing ceremony will be attended by the vice president, with President Trump potentially joining. And Sharon Reardon tells us a group of Iranian Americans are planning to protest Iran's World Cup game against New Zealand today at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood.
They're fiercely opposed to the Islamic Republic regime and are asking FIFA to ban the team from the World Cup tournament. Nasser Sharif, president of the California Society for Democracy in Iran, tells KTLA.
Iran's football federation is controlled by Iran Revolutionary Guard. They're terrorist organizations. We believe that FIFA, if they believe in their own principles, they need to give a red card to the Iran's football federations.
On Sunday, the Iranian team landed at LAX but was forced to move their practice location to Tijuana due to visa restrictions imposed by the Trump administration. U.S. officials now say the team will be allowed to play against New Zealand tonight. I'm Sharon Reardon.
12 people are dead after a plane crash in Missouri. Sergeant Justin Ewing with the Missouri State Highway Patrol saying the crash happening shortly before 11:30 a.m. local time yesterday near the Butler Memorial Airport. That's about 60 miles south of Kansas City.
Upon arrival, law enforcement and fire and EMS personnel did locate a downed plane. We can confirm that there were 12 occupants on board of that plane, 1 pilot and 11 passengers. This was a skydiving plane.
There were no survivors. The FAA and NTSB are both investigating. Shortly after returning to Rome, the Holy Father expressing his gratitude to God for welcome he received from the people of Spain for his apostolic journey that took place June 6th through the 12th. He says, I thank the Spanish people who welcomed me with great enthusiasm and devotion. He said this at the Angelus yesterday. The Pope especially thanked the King, King Felipe V, who welcomed the Pope to Madrid and bid him farewell on his last day in the Canary Islands. And after a mechanical issue with the papal plane, the King offering the Pope the use of his private plane, which brought the Pope back safely to Rome on Friday evening. He also expressed appreciation for the many people who prepared his visit and for the bishops in Spain who guided the faithful to welcome the Holy Father. The Pope releasing his message for the 10th World Day of the Poor to be observed on November 15th, reflecting on Psalm 14, the Lord is the refuge of the poor. The Pope noting that they were written during a dramatic period marked by the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, when the people felt deprived of God's presence and experienced unprecedented material and moral misery. In his message released yesterday and dated June 13th, the feast of St. Anthony of Padua, the Holy Father, observing Psalm 14, continues to speak to every and those who go through life as if there were nothing greater than themselves. Sadly, he says, we see that even today there is widespread social injustice arising from arrogant corruption, which is as deplorable as it is discriminatory. The Holy Father going on to note that the consequences often fall first upon the poor, whose numbers continue to grow in many areas. The absence of God is no longer placing people side by side in mutual respect, but places one above the other in a relationship of domination and oppression. The Pope also warned the cry of the poor is often silenced through a multitude of increasingly subtle tactics, while the digital world can worsen prejudice and reinforce indifference. The poor, he said, have no choice but to cry out to God, adding they entrust themselves to him, certain they will be heard because God is faithful and rich in mercy. Nazzareno Lanciati, an Italian missionary who dedicated his life to Brazil, it was beatified over the weekend. Thaddeus Jones with Vatican News has more on the saint, who's moving closer towards sainthood in the area where he served for 30 years until he was martyred back in 2001.
Father Nazzareno Lanciati was beatified in the city of Jauru in Brazil in the state of Mato Grosso, where he served for 30 years until he was martyred in 2001. Born in Rome, Italy on the 3rd of March 1940, Lanciati was ordained a priest in 1966. In 1971, he arrived in Brazil as a missionary and settled in Jauru, where he carried out a fruitful apostolate and left a lasting mark on all who knew him. One such person is Osvaldo Piva, a friend of the new blessed, who in an interview with Vatican News recalled how Father Nazzareno had a great devotion to Our Lady and to Jesus in the Eucharist. And one of the most striking characteristics was his trust in divine providence, living in a parish that lacked even electricity and basic means of communication. But he never lost heart. The friendship between the two men grew through the Marian movement of priests, which Father Nazzareno served as the national director in Brazil. In the interview, he noted that he had the movement's spirituality in his soul, his heart, and his life. He was Marian and Eucharistic, loved hearing confessions, and practiced great penance, the spirituality of littleness, spiritual childhood, consecration to the heart of Mary, and total trustful abandonment to God. These were all characteristics that he embraced. And it was precisely this complete abandonment to God that led him to devote himself to the poorest and the most neglected. At the parish of Our Lady of Pilar, where he served, he found a charitable institution that provided medical care for vulnerable people. He also worked on behalf of laborers and their families, combating drug trafficking and prostitution. And in retaliation for his pastoral work, 2 men broke into his home on the night of February 11th, 2001. One of them shot the priest in the back of the head, striking his 4th vertebrae. Father Nazareno Lanciotti died on February 22nd at the age of 61, but not before forgiving his attackers, a sign of a life wholly offered to God following the example of the Virgin Mary. I'm Thaddeus Jones.
Pope Leo XIV.
And Ross Cullen tells us that President Trump will be in Europe today for the G7 summit hosted by the French president.
The town of Evian on the shoreline of Lake Geneva is hosting this year's summit of the leaders of France, the US, the UK, Germany, Italy, Japan and Canada, and there is high security here ahead of the arrival of the heads of state and government later on Monday. Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump will hold face-to-face talks after the news that the US and Iran have agreed to sign a peace accord in Switzerland later this week, and future post-conflict planning, especially regarding the Strait of Hormuz, will form the major part of Monday's talks. Ross Cullen, Evian.
The National Weather Service says 17, yes, you heard correctly, 17 tornadoes were on the ground last Thursday in Illinois and northwest Indiana. The severe weather caused significant power outages across the region, a utility spokesperson adding that it has restored power to 99% of those who were actually in the dark. And a big story out of the UK this morning. Michael Kastner tells us the United Kingdom is banning social media for children under 16.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced the new rules Monday that could take effect as soon as next year. The ban would likely include platforms like Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and X. The ban will be modeled after a similar law passed last year in Australia, but aims to go further. It could block live streaming and chatting with strangers. The UK is also looking at possibly imposing curfews to limit online activity. Starmer said that social media is addictive and making children unhappy. I'm Michael Kastner.
Several businesses are damaged in connection with the strip mall fire in Somerset, New Jersey. Dozens of firefighters called to stores on Hamilton Street overnight. A grocery store, a discount store, a laundromat are among the damaged stores. No reports of any injuries. The extent of the damage is unclear. The cause is under investigation. And the New York Police Department says more than 60 people were arrested after wild celebrations spilled out into the streets following the Knicks NBA championship. Some fans clashing with police, smashing windshields, and climbing onto school buses in Times Square. Video on social media shows several buses on fire as fans chanted and lit fireworks. The Knicks did clinch the best-of-7 series over the Spurs with a 94-90 win in San Antonio. That happened on Saturday night. City leaders are planning a ticker tape parade in the Big Apple, and that'll happen on Thursday. 13 minutes past the hour. Thanks so much for tuning in to a Monday morning edition of EWTN's Catholic Connection. We have great guests this morning, as we do every single day. We have the wonderful Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse from the Ruth Institute, who is declaring the month of June in addition to the month of the Sacred Heart. We're going to talk about the month of why men matter. Masculinity is back. Jen will explain. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Before we get to Jen, it's 15 minutes past the hour, and that means, of course, Journey Home Highlights with our very own Matt Swaim, producer of the wonderful program, The Journey Home, seen on Monday evenings, and also, of course, with the Coming Home Network and the Sunrise Morning Show on EWTN. All right, so this is quite the story. Do you think this is one of the most, how we say, bizarre or enlightening journeys into Catholicism? What do you think in all the years you've been working with the Journey Home program? Thanks.
There are a lot of intense stories, but tonight's episode with Deacon Michael Nixon and his wife Jean is a while. I'll give you the short one. the short version.
Okay.
So Deacon Michael Nixon's dad was a motorcycle cop who murdered his mom. Then that left Deacon Mike homeless as a kid. He found a community with the Hare Krishnas and eventually got sort of quote-unquote ordained with them. But then they got him involved in drug trafficking, and he ended up in federal prison. That's where he discovered some Catholic reading materials from people like Teresa of Avila and Thomas Aquinas. Had a major conversion, came out. He and his wife both became Catholic. Now their son's a priest in Tallahassee, and
no way.
Gene has been running a 24-hour adoration chapel in North Florida in the Panhandle for the past 30 years.
Wow.
So
That's
however
crazy.
far away you think you are, or however
Right.
far away you think your kids are, this would be an encouraging story for you to watch tonight. And I've left out about 500 details.
Okay, now you did say during the break, and at first I thought you were kidding, but then it makes sense. They had to change all their children's names, correct?
Yeah, so I mean they had Hare Krishna names, and they wanted them to have Christian names. This is part of it, but also, one of the issues that's a really interesting piece of the story is that, Mike was in federal prison for drug trafficking and has this major conversion. Well, his family's on the outside, and they're all Hare Krishna.
Oh my gosh!
So as part of this, there's this issue of how do you explain this conversion you've had in prison to the people who are on the outside, and
Right.
Eventually there were other things going on in his family's world that led that along. But the kids were very young, at the time, and this is a whole new kind of way of living their life and looking at the world. But they are you'll find that they're incredibly faithful people who. What I'm telling you sounds really sensational, but the way that they tell the story is actually not that. I mean, it's pretty even keel for all the stuff that they've been through. I mean, when he was in federal prison on trial, awaiting trial, he was in the same prison that Jeffrey Epstein died in.
Oh my goodness!
Like, there's some wild stuff in this story, to say the least.
Do tell me he's working on a book, because this has the makings of a
Well,
bestseller, for
he'd
crying
make a
out
great
loud.
one. It's interesting too, and this is a detail that you'll be interested in. So when they were still Hare Krishna, the first date that they went on before they got married was they were living in L.A. and they went to go see Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon in the theaters.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So, but they didn't really understand the Catholicism of Francis of Assisi at the
Right.
time. Because your
Yeah.
book was not available to them.
Thank you for that
Your
shameless
your
plug,
brand new
my
book.
friend.
So they're just like, hey, here's another cool, traveling hippie guy. And
Right.
of course, later in prison, Deacon Mike discovers the real St. Francis. And is sort of blown away by just how deep the story and the spirituality and the sacramental faith of a guy like Francis goes. But as a Hare Krishna, he's like, oh, this guy seems like a cool, chill dude.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's interesting is that, he comes out of prison and his wife gets obviously impressed by what he's showing her and sharing with her. And then she converts, and then they decide to go into the diaconate. I was talking to you during the break that it's one thing to have such a major conversion from where they were than coming into the church, because that's a challenging journey of itself. But then to say, okay, I'm going to apply for the diaconate, which is a whole nother experience.
Well, and one in which, the whole family's kind of got to be okay with.
Yes.
It's not like the priesthood where the priest can say, as happened with last week's guest, where we had or actually 2 weeks ago, we had a priest who came from a Buddhist family, and they were all completely against him converting and against him becoming a priest. But he was an adult, and he was able to do this sort of on his own. In the case of the diaconate, the whole family has to kind of reckon with the deal, and actually the wife has to sign off on it.
Yes,
So,
I know that very well. Thank you very much.
That might be a detail that you've shared on the air before.
Yes. Well, I always think about that in terms of how important it is that you both have to be on board, because it's a huge step. It's not just a deacon. Most of the deacons in the United States are married, so it's a diaconate couple. I mean, obviously the ordination and the rights go to the deacon himself. We get the benefit, obviously, of his faith and whatnot, but it's so important to have, the wife has to be there, the family has to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to watch their spirituality kind of grow and find some of the things they were hungry for as Hare Krishnas and find the rootedness of them fulfilled in the Catholic Church. And that's one of the things that I hope comes across in all of these stories, that you see that people are starving for something. They're hungry for, in Deacon Mike's case, he's hungry for family. because, his dad murdered his mom and like the whole thing blew up and he's a homeless kid. Otherwise, he would never have ended up with the Hare Krishnas. He's looking for people who love him and want to show him how to exist in a community of people. I mean, we got that. That's what the church is.
Well,
right?
Yesterday the gospel, right? Go to the lost sheep of Israel.
Yeah, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Jesus is trying to get the family back together.
Yep.
And other things too. He wants to have this peace. One of the things that he'll mention in the show is that when he's in prison, his whole world has crashed down around him, and he's in a major state of anxiety, and he's repeating these Hare Krishna mantras, and he's not finding peace. But he's remembering that his Catholic grandma used to pray the Our Father and the 23rd Psalm, and he doesn't remember all the pieces of them, but he's reciting those pieces that he does remember, and he finds that there's peace in that direction, and there wasn't peace in the direction of the mantras that he'd been repeating. So just a little thing like remembering a few lines from the Our Father. You think about all these Catholics that have wandered away from the faith. Mother Angelica, one of the reasons that she told Marcus she wanted this show to happen is because all kinds of Catholics have loved ones who were raised in the faith and have gone other places. And you never know when a line or two from the Our Father might come back to him,
Well, think about that. His grandmother was a faithful Catholic, and she did what she needed to do as a Catholic, and she was a witness, and look at the impact that had on years later.
Yeah. And again, these are the fruits that happen just from praying for these other people. Marcus gets asked all the time, and I'm so struck by this. People are like, oh, what do all these journeys have in common? What are the common threads? And of course, the cheating answer is grace. But the one thing that Marcus says very seriously is that all these people had somebody praying for them. Mm-hmm. All these people had somebody praying for them. And that is the key. I mean, you had somebody praying for you.
Well,
right?
This just popped into my head. It must be the Holy Spirit because I'm not that smart. But years ago, when I was at Channel 7, and it was shortly after we came back into the church, I received this huge box at the TV station of all these handwritten cards from a Catholic grade school in Metro Detroit. And the teacher told me that each year the students pick someone for whom to pray. And that year, they all picked me. And she says, I don't know why. I don't know why, but they all picked you. And I'm thinking about looking back now. We were newly back in the church, probably, I think, about 5 or 6 years. And there was a lot going on in our life. And you just don't know what prompts people to pray for you. But when you're being prayed for or prayed over, it has an impact.
Well, and that's such a huge part of our whole apostolate. The stories tell you a lot of things. Tonight they'll tell you maybe how to communicate with whatever Hare Krishnas are left in the world that you might run into, right? Mm-hmm. To help them understand. But what it'll tell you more than anything else is never stop praying for that person and
never lose hope, because as you said, you think someone is too far from God, it's never going to happen. With God, all things are possible, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's son's a priest in Tallahassee. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, who would have thought that?
And he's a deacon, and she runs an adoration chapel. So there you go.
It's wild what God can do with people who are hungry for Him and just want to be. They're just seeking after truth.
Wouldn't you love to be part of the conversation with Mama Mary and Jesus, and they're talking, and Mama Mary's talking about them, and he's like, "We got this, Mom. Let's do this." And then boom,
it's like someone is like, "Oh, amazing. This person's an impossible case." All right, Jude. Go do your work.
Go do your stuff.
Saint Therese, go mess with that person.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It happens all the time. All the time.
How much fun it must be for you to be involved in these stories. I mean, fun and encouraging and uplifting. And never, if you get down, you probably just turn to one of these testimonies, which are amazing. Thank you, Matthew. We will talk again, God willing, on Monday morning. Appreciate you and all the great work you do on radio and TV. Of course, our very own Matt Swaim. We'll be right back. Don't forget, tune in to the Journey Home tonight. 27 minutes past the hour, a busy Monday morning. It's June 15th. Great to catch up with Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse from the Ruth Institute. Terrific website, ruthinstitute.org. Reading from a recent press release. Now, we know as Catholics, this is a month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Others call it so-called Pride Month. In her press release, Jen says, Pride Month is out. Authentic masculinity is in. People are fed up with pride. I'm also fed up, she says, with mainstream society bad-mouthing men my entire adult life. I've heard that masculinity is toxic, men are mean, and dads are unnecessary doofuses. Scapegoating half the human race cannot solve any social problems. On the other hand, channeling male energy and enthusiasm toward protecting the weak can solve a lot of problems. Jen, I don't have time to read the whole press release, but it's fantastic. Let's talk about this. What prompted your concerns in terms of really getting the word out that men indeed do matter? Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Teresa. You know, the past few years, pride has been sliding for several years. We've been noticing this all along. You know, it used to be that we could raise a lot of money during the month of June at the Ruth Institute. We would say, resist pride, send money. We resist pride, send money. And everybody would send money because they would see pride stuff all over the place. And, you know, in effect, the gay lobby was advertising for our message, you know, because people were fed up with it. And that has, thank God, that has gone away. You know, that's just not the case anymore. And so we thought, okay, we don't need to talk about the fact that Pride Month is going away. Everybody kind of knows that. People sense that. Let's talk about what we need to do instead. Let's take this conversation to the deepest possible level. And that is, let's restore the sense of manhood and what authentic masculinity looks like. Because if you really stop and think about it, the feminist attack on masculinity and the homosexual attack on man-woman marriage, those things have been like a pincer movement, trapping all of us, you know, and confusing everybody. And so we thought, you know what, let's talk about masculinity just straight up. I shouldn't have put it that way. We just directly defend manhood and the proper understanding of manhood. So that's what we're doing, Teresa.
But what you said, those key words, a proper understanding of manhood, in terms of who men are, we're all made in the image and likeness of God. We are equal but different with different roles. That, I think, is, if we have the Catholic understanding of it, it makes so much sense, and the world works properly if we adhere to that. The problem is when you say, you know, men, people automatically think of, you know, the masculinity, they think of negative images in the media especially.
Yes, and that idea does not spring immediately to a person's mind unless it has been planted there. Okay, and the mainstream of media, you're very familiar with media, also advertising, entertainment, academia, for a long time, undermining masculinity has been a constant messaging. The only reason we think men are bad is because we've been told that. Everybody has men in their life whom they love and to whom they wish well, you know. And if you want to promote the authentic interests of women, the fact is many of women's interests are wrapped up in their relationships with other people. And so what's happened to women is that we're supposed to think men are toxic and babies are a ball and chain that prevent us from our happiness. But since we're relational creatures, acting on that has not made women happy, you know. And so taking all these things together, the Catholic understanding really does have a unique thing to offer. What we say, it's man for woman, woman for man, us working together, imaging God in our cooperation and collaboration, and in our communion, really, because God is a communion of persons. And so when we are in communion with one another, that's when we image God most fully. That's what will make us the most happy. And that's what we need to emphasize. And so we thought, you know, doggone it, it's time to speak up for the fellas.
So it's perfect timing. Father's Day, of course, coming up this weekend. And, of course, we hear about the Father's Day gifts. But here's an example. So I'm putting my news together this morning, as I always do. And there's a particular news service that we use. And so there's a feature story, what we call a voicer, where the reporter is talking about a subject, okay, without any audio or sound. It's just their voice. So they do this story on what fathers want for Father's Day, and at the end there's a snarkly remark about, well, you know, fathers are experts at sitting around and doing nothing but playing with the remote. I'm like, where did that come from? And why is that necessary? So the point is to give the image, as you said, of these lazy, no good men who just sit around and do nothing.
Right. We don't need men. Okay, that's the message that's right there. You know, the male half of the human race is useless. We don't need them. We're better off without them. Well, now who benefits from that, Teresa? Okay, when you get the men out of the family, when you systematically get the men out of the family, which is what has happened to the poor, make no mistake, systematically men are out of the families of the poor. The women and children are sitting ducks for anybody who wants to prey on them. That is a fact. And so it's infuriating to me, particularly that so many people in the educated professional managerial classes promote this message, and at the same time they themselves are getting married and staying married. And it's like, what in the just stop, people. Stop, people. Back in the day, even poor children got to have their daddies their whole lives, and that's just not true anymore. And if it happened once in a while, you'd say, okay, there's something off with that family. But it's not happening just once in a while. It's happening systematically at the lower educational and income levels of society. When it's happening systematically, you got to say somebody's working on that. Somebody's making that happen. And it's time to put a stop to it.
Well, if you look at even the prison system, anyone who, let's say, is in prison ministry will tell you that one of the biggest problems with those who are behind bars is that they didn't have a father figure in their life when they were younger.
Yep. We've known that for a long time. You can't pretend like this is some new fact that just hit the scene. And by the way, civilization was not built by doofuses sitting in front of the TV playing with the remote, okay? Men invented televisions. Men invented electricity. If it weren't for men, the lights wouldn't be on. We wouldn't be having this long
An Italian Irishman invented radio. Marconi was half Irish, half Italian. So there you go, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, we have 1 minute before. 1 second, Jay. I just want to ask you a question because I know you always give our listeners great action items. So I'm looking at this really great press release, which has tons of information in it. But what you're doing is you're trying to inspire people to make a difference with this. We are moving into Father's Day weekend. We are in the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Pride Month, Thanks Be to God, is moving to the background. It's still there. I don't think we can ignore it, and you're not. That's why you're addressing this. But we want to have some action items for our listeners. I know you say our listeners are very involved and you get a great response when you're on the program. So let me first remind people to whom we're speaking. Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse from the Ruth Institute. Her website is fantastic, great information. And she has several experts that work with her as well, ruthinstitute.org. And we are talking about the fact that men indeed matter. I love that picture that you use with this press release, adorable little boy on his father's shoulder, just so sweet. And we're diving into a very powerful press release that she just released this month, of course, the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Pride Month is out. Authentic masculinity is in. Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse is the president of the Ruth Institute and says we need to bring back the importance of men in our lives. But I think, Jen, when we come back, we can talk about the understanding from a truly Catholic perspective. Does that sound like a plan?
That's a plan.
All right, and some action items for our listeners. Again, check out her great work, ruthinstitute.org, ruthinstitute.org. Men matter. Amen to that. We'll be right back. It's a Monday morning. It's June 15th. Thank you for tuning in to EWTN's Catholic Connection on a Monday and every day, Monday through Friday on this very network. Having a very important conversation with our friend, Dr. Jen, of course, Roback Morse from the Ruth Institute. Okay, quick question. Do we know there are probably more than one group? There's probably more than one group behind this, but primarily radical feminists pushing these ideas over the past 50, 60 years. Who's responsible primarily, Jen, for this attitude toward men, do you think?
Oh. Yes, radical feminism is part of it. But for sure, Teresa, what's behind radical feminism? The population controllers are behind a lot of it, okay? These people who think there are too many people in the world, they have pumped billions, literally billions of dollars into pro-abortion, pro-contraception causes. And part of that messaging has always been that women being independent is a good thing. That's where the messaging is coming from, and that's who's paying for it. Because at some point, John D. Rockefeller III figured out that he could get 90% of what he wanted, namely fewer babies, if he stopped talking about population control. Because population control just freaked everybody out. No, everybody thought he was a creep until 1974, when he figured out if I talk about women's empowerment, women's education, women postpone childbearing voluntarily because I tell them, and my people I give money to, we all tell them this is a good thing to postpone childbearing as long as possible. I can get my reduced population by doing that. And a lot of the money for these various for this kind of messaging has come from people like Rockefeller, like Warren Buffett has put literally billions of dollars into promoting abortion, and all of this messaging is wrapped together. That you think if I love men and I love babies and I get married at 23, I'm a loser. You know, I'm a loser, and that has all been part of the packaging that has been bought and paid for by this one group of people whose influence is not talked about enough. But I think you can't overemphasize it enough. The way in which these billions of dollars have been directed toward this whole branch of anti-family, anti-child messaging.
And no matter what, no matter how hard they try, and they have done a great deal of damage, which do such a great job of documenting it and helping us work through it as you are today. But at the end of the day, the truth comes to the surface. I mean, the science, the evidence, the research with which you're very familiar, and also the soul and the spirit. I mean, I look at all these young people coming into the Catholic Church in the United States, in France, in Spain, these places that are so secularized, but they're searching, they're looking for something more. And so many women still, despite everything, want children. Yeah, I think that's encouraging. That's a natural law. That's the truth of the Catholic faith speaking.
Yes, that's right. And you don't have to be a Catholic to believe it. You can look around and you can see it, you know, that this is how people really feel. And I think you're right. This is part of the appeal of the Catholic Church at this point. People are fed up with the half measures. You know, a lot of people have tried to resist this stuff, but nobody has gone to the heart of the matter to the same extent that the Catholic faith has done. And so, you know, even when we have goofy people in various places in the church, which of course it's an organization of 1.4 billion sinners, of course you're going to have people you have to apologize for or be embarrassed by or something, you know, that's going to happen. But the church's teaching, Teresa, the church's teaching is sound. It's true. It will make people happy if they embrace it, you know. And so that's what we're about. And that's why we're an interfaith organization, Teresa. You know, I mean, I was at a conference not long ago where I was asked to talk about the contraceptive ideology, and the place was at least half non-Catholic, at least half evangelicals. And they were like, Dr. Morse, tell us about this. We don't understand it. You know, it's like, okay, no, I'm glad you asked. You know, so I think that is part of what we're dealing with here. And that's why our message that men matter is resonating with people, because it's part of the natural law.
So what can we do? You always love to give our wonderful listeners an action items because they're so active in their faith. Yes. I know they can go, first of all, to your website, ruthinstitute.org. But this week, as we move into and lead into Father's Day, what would you recommend in conversation on our own Facebook pages? What can we do as evangelists to make a difference here, do you think, Jen?
Yes. Well, you can go to the Ruth Institute Facebook page. We're putting up a lot of information and posts that you can share that invite people to praise the men in their lives, to say something positive about your husband, your father, your son, to offer, to let the men know that there are some women at least to appreciate and respect them. And so that's available on all of our platforms. It's most active on Facebook, but it's also on YouTube, and it's also on our Substack page. So there's that. There's merchandise you can purchase that says Men Matter on the, you know, like you can buy a baseball cap that says Men Matter on the front, and then on the back, across the back, it says the data shows it. You know, or you can buy a T-shirt, or, you know, that kind of thing, as a gift for your dad, you know. So those gifts are available if you know, the dad, your dad, the dads in your life, whoever they might be. And then finally, we would sure appreciate any financial contribution that people feel moved to make. You know, we George Soros doesn't send us any money. we don't have.
Nor would you accept it if he did. I'm sure. We know that. Yeah.
There's that.
I love that though. I love this idea of these different items that you have to make a statement. And I also think that what you said earlier is so important, especially for the men in our lives, but also if you are married and you are complimenting your husband, if you do it in public as well. I'm not saying to be a phony about it, but if you're having a conversation like we had a dinner party over the weekend, and I couldn't say enough about my husband, who is like my sous chef, who helps me with anything, who's extremely organized and talented. He's an engineer, so he does everything really well in terms of, the structure of things and the way things are set up or whatever. And people are saying, oh, great party, great food. I'm saying, well, it's a team effort. I couldn't do it without my husband. Those kind of little things send a message of men matter and marriage matters too.
100%. And I agree with you. In my opinion, engineers make great husbands. I'm also married to an engineer.
There you go.
But think about it. Where would we be without the contributions of men?
No,
I mean,
there's no way.
So many of the things that make our lives convenient and comfortable, they keep the air conditioning on, they keep the lights on. I turn on the light switch. It might as well be magic. I don't know.
I know.
How that works,
I'm the
right?
same way. And my husband says, honey, you're very creative, but just stay away from the buttons and the electricity and everything will be fine. I got to run, Jen. Great to talk to you, my dear. Great work on this. And again, go to theruthinstitute.org. Check out all of their great information and this latest press release on Men Matter. We'll be right back. Oh, no, actually, we are segueing, as we say in the business, to our scripture verse of the week with our friend Gail Buckley Barringer and Catholic Scripture Study International. Good morning, my dear.
Good morning. Yes, our scripture verse today is from Matthew, chapter 10, verse 37. Says, "Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me." I think when we first hear these words, it's a bit shocking, and confusing, because after all, aren't we supposed to love our parents? And doesn't Scripture command us to honor our mother and father?
And father, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, of course it does. But as Jesus is teaching us what I think is one of the most important truths of the spiritual life, is that God comes first, above everything and anyone. Notice that he doesn't say, we shouldn't love our parents. He doesn't say we shouldn't love our spouse or our children, or rather he's telling us that no human relationship, no matter how precious, should take the place that belongs to God alone. And, in Luke's gospel, he goes even further. He says, if you love your brother or sister or children or spouse more than you love me, then you can't be my disciple. And I think we sometimes misunderstand this. We think that if we love God above everything else, there's not enough love left over for other people. But I think the opposite is true. I think loving God and putting God first helps us to love others even more.
I was just going to say that. If you're right with God, everything else will follow, and you'll understand the importance of the people in your life. You have to love your family.
Exactly.
And
St.
respect your
Augustine
parents.
said that.
Yeah.
He absolutely said that. And I know that putting God first sometimes is, it's easy to say, but maybe difficult to do. I mean, I think many people would never consciously put, anyone above God, but sometimes they don't even realize it. I want to relate a personal situation that I'm in right now, Teresa, and that is that I have a very good friend, a dear friend, who's engaged to a man who's divorced, and he applied for his annulment, but it hasn't come through. So they've decided to go ahead and have a civil wedding outside of the church, and they're going to be married in a park, by a girlfriend of theirs who has a license to marry people. And, I'm so happy for them that they found each other, and I'm delighted that my friend is so happy. But I told her I can't attend this wedding.
Right.
And she said to me, well, I understand your principles, and it's okay. Well, but Teresa, it's not my principles. It's my faith. I can't attend their wedding because it would be condoning sin. I mean, she told me that she loves her fiancé more than anything, and that she doesn't care about church rules. And she wants to prove to him how much she loves him by not waiting for the annulment. In other words, she's putting her fiancé above God. I mean, she probably doesn't think of it that way, but that's exactly what she's doing. And it's not church rules. It's God's law. God founded our church, and he gave the apostles and their successors the right to make these decisions about faith and morals. And I know it's difficult to wait on an annulment. I had to wait, and it's hard. But people seem to think annulments is some kind of punishment from the church or whatever. But I look at it as a gift of mercy, because God said, whoever marries, divorce and marries another is committing sin. But the church gives us this gift of mercy by, if we can go through an annulment and prove that our former marriage was not valid, then we can marry. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to marry without sinning in God's eyes. So I look at it as a gift. And, it's summer now, and there are many weddings going on, and maybe somebody's listening that doesn't know what to do if they're in a similar situation. I love my friend, and I'm really upset that she's putting her wishes and her love for someone else above God. By doing this, she's not only marrying a man who's already married in the eyes of God, but she'll be living with him and having sex with him as well. And those are two mortal sins, adultery and fornication. And, God says no one who commits these sins will be allowed in heaven. And so I'm praying that my friends will, at some point, realize this sin and repent. And I know people think I'm being holier than thou or whatever, and I'm not judging her. I'm not the one to judge. God's the judge. But I love her so much, I don't want to see her doing this. I remember Mother Angelica once said, if you saw somebody running towards the end of a cliff and they were going to fall to their death, would you just stand there and watch them run, or would you try to stop them? And that's what we need to do. It's hard. It's hard because she looks at me as, I know it's put a dent in our friendship, and that kills me. It really hurts me. But
I know you, and I know you probably said it very lovingly and explained it, and she understands. It sounds like she understands. But again, explaining it, you have a responsibility because of your knowledge, and you were invited to this wedding to say, this is why I'm not going. I'm not judging you. I love you, but this is why I can't go. And maybe even, you probably have already done this as well, to encourage her to go back and read and really figure out what is an annulment? What does it really mean? Go talk to a priest, because I know, and you probably affirmed this, many of the people that I've interviewed or spoken with who have gone through the annulment process describe it, even though it was painful and it was a long period, in some cases, it was so cathartic and so healing for them to go through that process.
Yes. It's very hard, especially when the person who is trying for the annulment has to go through all those questions and relive, the bad things in their former marriage. It's really difficult. But again, like you said, it's cathartic. It really is. And I think, and then you have a clean slate, that
to start over. Gail, we are out of time. Speaking of clean slate, we'll start over again next Monday with more great information on our scripture verse of the week and background. Gail joins us every Monday from Catholic Scripture Study International. We'll be right back and remind you what's coming up on hour number 2 on EWTN Radio Extra. Stay tuned. This week we're celebrating with EWTN radio affiliate KXYM 98.9 FM. They serve Belcourt, North Dakota, and they've been partnering with us not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not even 10, but 11 years. Congratulations to a great radio team, and thank you for being part of the EWTN family. We so appreciate you. Once again, those call letters, KXYM and 98.9 on the FM dial. That's my radio background kicking in. Anyway, I love to make announcements like that because it's such good news about our radio partners. I digress. Okay, coming up, second hour, 2 cents. I've been thinking and praying a lot about St. Francis of Assisi for a number of reasons. We live in the land of St. Francis, less than 40 minutes from Assisi, at least part-time, and this is the year of St. Francis, so there's an awful lot going on here that's so beautiful related to this great saint. But also, I have my new book coming out tomorrow from EWTN, volume number 2 of Italy's Shrines and Wonders, and then with the breaking news about, God willing, an agreement to end the war that could be signed, as you heard the news, could be, hasn't been signed yet, but could be signed on Friday if all goes well, got me thinking about St. Francis, known as the Saint of Peace. Even his city, Assisi, when you drive into Assisi, it says Città del Pace. In other words, Città della Pace, City of Peace. He's the Saint of Peace from the town of Peace, and he has a lot to teach us about Pace. We'll explain up next. And then the one, the only Bill Donahue from the Catholic League with more on the issue of gay pride losing steam and also the attacks on fatherhood, given that Father's Day again is this weekend. We'll be right back, but this time on EWTN's Radio Extra on a Monday. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it's a Monday morning. It's June 15th. Great to be with you on a Monday and every day here on EWTN's Radio Extra for hour number 2 of Catholic Connection and EWTN production. Coming up in the program today, excited to mention to you in 2 cents a little bit more detail about my second volume of the Italy's Shrines and Wonders series published by EWTN. This one all about St. Francis of Assisi. I'm very excited about this book. It's very similar to the first Italy Shrines and Wonders, which is a general introduction of Italy, a great travel guide, insider tips. But in this book on St. Francis, we dive deeply into the spirituality of this great saint and itinerant preacher. What helped shape him? The places, the people, the animals, nature, all those things in this book we go into great detail. Now, you can also sign up to get my St. Francis series that was produced by EWTN Mission Advancement, our Learn series, and it's called The Unknown St. Francis, similar to the theme of the book, where we take you to many different places off the beaten path in the life of this saint, places that were very important, again, to his formation as a great Christian leader. And so you can find the book at EWTN's religious catalog, and you can also sign up for the free series and just go to EWTN.com/St. Francis. Again, it's free, and they also have an opportunity for you to make a small donation after watching the series. The series is free. You don't have to pay anything for it. But if you so choose, you can make a donation to the network, and they will get you a copy of the book. So there you go. So that's 2 cents. And then Bill Donahue is going to give us a lot more than just 2 cents. He's terrific. He's the president of the Catholic League. And we have Bill for 2 segments. Very exciting. And he's going to pick up where Jen left off. And it's going to continue the conversation on how we are making a lot of progress in terms of helping this so-called Pride Month lose some steam, as well as the attacks on fatherhood, being that we are going into Father's Day weekend. So Bill Donahue from the Catholic League will join us for the rest of the show after the news, the weather, and our 2 cents segment. Here's the weather from the National Weather Service. They're saying scattered and severe storms capable of damaging wind gusts and some hail expected this afternoon and evening from the upper Ohio River Valley into the northeast, and from the Appalachians into the mid-Atlantic states. Excessive rainfall from heavy thunderstorms may produce areas of flash flooding from southern New Mexico into the western and northern Gulf Coast, and that will be with us until Wednesday. It is a Monday morning. We appreciate you. It's almost 3 minutes past the hour on this Monday, which is June 15th. Right now, we need to check the news here at EWTN's Radio Extra. Well, as we mentioned, President Trump says the U.S. has reached an agreement with Iran, making a significant development in ongoing diplomatic efforts. Hira Mustafa reports that Pakistan did play a key role mediating that deal, but there's still work to be done.
Now even the most toughest phase begins, and that would be the implementation of the peace deal and the confidence-building measures between the U.S. and Iran. And Pakistan will remain engaged with the regional players.
In a Sunday post on his Truth Social site, the president declaring the removal of U.S. naval blockades on Iran, allowing the Strait of Hormuz to reopen. The deal will initiate a 60-day period for further negotiations on Iran's nuclear program, including discussions on enriched uranium stockpiles. Pakistan's prime minister says the agreement is set to be formally signed on June 19th in Switzerland. The signing ceremony will be attended by the vice president, President Trump potentially joining. Meanwhile, we have a big story developing related to FIFA and Iran. Sharon Reardon tells us a group of Iranian Americans are planning to protest the World Cup game against New Zealand at SoFi Stadium.
They're fiercely opposed to the Islamic Republic regime and are asking FIFA to ban the team from the World Cup tournament. Nasser Sharif, president of the California Society for Democracy in Iran, tells KTLA.
Iran's football federation is controlled by Iran Revolutionary Guard. They're terrorist organizations. We believe that FIFA, if they believe in their own principles, they need to give a red card to the Iran's football federations.
On Sunday, the Iranian team landed at LAX but was forced to move their practice location to Tijuana due to visa restrictions imposed by the Trump administration. U.S. officials now say the team will be allowed to play against New Zealand tonight. I'm Sharon Reardon.
12 people are dead after a plane crash in Missouri. Sergeant Justin Ewing with the Missouri State Highway Patrol saying the crash happened shortly before 11:30 a.m. local time on Sunday near the Butler Memorial Airport. That's about 60 miles south of Kansas City.
Upon arrival, law enforcement and fire and EMS personnel did locate a downed plane. We can confirm that there were 12 occupants on board of that plane, 1 pilot and 11 passengers. This was a skydiving plane.
There were no survivors. The FAA and NTSB are both investigating. Shortly after returning to Rome, Pope Leo expressing his gratitude to God for the welcome he received from the people of Spain for his apostolic journey, which took place between June 6th and the 12th. He said, "I thank the Spanish people who welcomed me with great enthusiasm and devotion." The Holy Father mentioning during the Angelus yesterday, especially King Felipe, who welcomed the Pope to Madrid and bid him farewell on his last day in the Canary Islands. And after a mechanical issue with the papal plane, the king offering the Holy Father the use of his private plane, which brought Pope Leo safely back to Rome on Friday night. He also expressed appreciation for the many people who prepared his visit for the bishops of Spain who guided the faithful to welcome the Holy Father. The Pope has released his message of the 10th World Day of the Poor to be observed on November 15th, reflecting on Psalm 14, "The Lord is the refuge of the poor." The Pope notes that this psalm, written during a dramatic period marked by the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem, where people felt deprived of God's presence and experienced unprecedented material and moral misery. In the message released yesterday, dated June 8th, the feast of St. Anthony of Padua, the Holy Father observes that Psalm 14 continues to speak to every generation. The opening verses, he says, point to the contrast between those who live wisely and those who go through life as if there were nothing greater than themselves. Sadly, he says, we see that even today there is widespread social injustice arising from arrogant corruption, which is as deplorable as it is discriminatory. He went on to note the consequences often fall first among the poor, whose numbers continue to grow in many societies. The absence of God, he says, no longer places people side by side in mutual respect, but instead above one another in a relationship of domination and oppression. The Pope warning the cry of the poor is often silenced through a multitude of increasingly subtle tactics, while the digital world can worsen prejudice and reinforce indifference. He said the poor have no choice but to cry out to God, adding that they entrust themselves to Him, certain they will be heard because God is faithful and rich in mercy. Thaddeus Jones with Vatican News tells us about a beautiful soon-to-be saint who was beatified over the weekend in the country he served.
Beatified in the city of Jauru in Brazil in the state of Mato Grosso, where he served for 30 years until he was martyred in 2001. Born in Rome, Italy on the 3rd of March 1940, Lanciotti was ordained a priest in 1966. In 1971, he arrived in Brazil as a missionary and settled in Jauru, where he carried out a fruitful apostolate and left a lasting mark on all who knew him. One such person is Osvaldo Piva, a friend of the new blessed, who in an interview with Vatican News recalled how Father Nazareno had a great devotion to Our Lady and to Jesus in the Eucharist. And one of the most striking characteristics was his trust in divine providence, living in a parish that lacked even electricity and basic means of communication. But he never lost heart. The friendship between the two men grew through the Marian movement of priests, which Father Nazareno served as the national director in Brazil. In the interview, he noted that he had the movement's spirituality in his soul, his heart, and his life. He was Marian and Eucharistic, loved hearing confessions, and practiced great penance. The spirituality of littleness, spiritual childhood, consecration to the heart of Mary, and total trustful abandonment to God, these were all characteristics that he embraced. And it was precisely this complete abandonment to God that led him to devote himself to the poorest and the most neglected. At the parish of Our Lady of Pilar, where he served, he found a charitable institution that provided medical care for vulnerable people. He also worked on behalf of laborers and their families, combating drug trafficking and prostitution. And in retaliation for his pastoral work, 2 men broke into his home on the night of February 11th, 2001. One of them shot the priest in the back of the head, striking his 4th vertebrae. Father Nazareno Lanciotti died on February 22nd at the age of 61. But not before forgiving his attackers, a sign of a life wholly offered to God, following the example of the Virgin Mary. I'm Thaddeus Jones.
Ross Cullen tells us President Trump will be in Europe today for the G7 summit hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron.
The French spa town of Evian on the shoreline of Lake Geneva is hosting this year's summit of the leaders of France, the US, the UK, Germany, Italy, Japan and Canada, and there is high security here ahead of the arrival of the heads of state and government later on Monday. Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump will hold face-to-face talks after the news the US and Iran have agreed to sign a peace accord in Switzerland later this week, and future post-conflict planning, especially regarding the Strait of Hormuz, will form the major part of Monday's talks. Ross Cullen, Evian.
The National Weather Service says 17 tornadoes. As I said in the first hour, yes, you're hearing that correctly, 17 tornadoes were on the ground. This happened last Thursday in Illinois and northwest Indiana. The severe weather causing significant power outages across the region. The good news is, though, a utility spokesperson adding it's restored 99% of the customers who were in the dark. Tammy Trujillo tells us the Centers for Disease Control issuing a food safety alert regarding a multi-state outbreak of infant botulism tied to a recalled powdered formula.
A total of 3 infants with infant botulism so far have been reported in the outbreak from 3 states, California, Pennsylvania, and Washington. The infants range in age from 2 to 5 months old, and all 3 consumed Nara Organics whole milk organic infant formula, which was recalled Saturday by Nara Organics. All 3 infants were hospitalized and treated with Baby Big, the FDA-approved treatment for infant botulism. No deaths have been reported. Testing of cans of Nara Organics brand formula is underway, and results are expected in the next few weeks. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
The U.S. Army celebrating its 251st birthday on Flag Day yesterday. Senior Army officials took part in a wreath-laying ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. Army installations across the U.S. and around the world hosted events to mark the anniversary of its founding as the Continental Army on June 14, 1775. The central theme for the year was This Will Defend, honoring the Army's role in protecting the nation. June 14th is also Flag Day, commemorating the adoption of the Stars and Stripes as the official flag of the United States back in 1777. And a big story, and we'll be following this more closely, coming out of the UK. United Kingdom, as Michael Kastner tells us, banning social media for children under 16.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced the new rules Monday that could take effect as soon as next year. The ban would likely include platforms like Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and X. The ban will be modeled after a similar law passed last year in Australia, but aims to go further. It could block live streaming and chatting with strangers. The UK is also looking at possibly imposing curfews to limit online activity. Starmer said that social media is addictive and making children unhappy. I'm Michael Kastner.
The New York police say more than 60 people were arrested after wild celebrations spilled out into the streets following the Knicks NBA championship. Some fans clashing with police, smashing windshields, and climbing onto school buses in Times Square. Video on social media shows several buses on fire as fans chanted and lit fireworks. And Knicks clinched the best-of-7 series over the Spurs with a 94-90 win in San Antonio. It is a Monday, June 15th. More Catholic Connection coming your way. Stay tuned. Minutes past the hour. Time for T's 2 cents. I give you my thoughts and opinions on certain things and issues. And as my late and dear friend Al Cresta used to say, the things that matter most. So this morning I wanted to talk a little bit about St. Francis, and for 2 reasons. Firstly, because he reminds me of so much of what we can do to make a difference in terms of instilling real peace. Of course, across the country and around the world, there's news of a quote-unquote peace deal, which we hope will be signed this Friday. There are plans to be signed this Friday. J.D. Vance is expected, as you heard in the news. President Trump is also expected, but he'll be busy, obviously, with the G7 summit. But this is very big news, and God willing, good news, that we can end this war, this conflict between Iran and the United States, which has cost a lot of lives and hurt a lot of people, obviously, and depending on where your opinion, we can disagree on this because this is a prudential matter in terms of whether, this was something that was needed after 47 years of Iran, taking control over certain areas, attacking people, the way they mistreat their people, or too dangerous. We have different opinions on it. But what I wanted to focus in on this morning is St. Francis of Assisi, because he truly was a man of peace. His hometown, Assisi, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, when you drive up that main road, going up that beautiful hill, when you see the city in all of its glory, that view never gets old, by the way, there's a big sign that says Assisi. It says, Benvenuto Assisi, welcome to Assisi, Città della Pace, the city of peace. And he's known as the Saint of Peace. His hometown, because of him, is known as the City of Peace. And why is that? He wasn't some sort of environmental hippie or a simple pacifist. He was very outspoken and very strong in his faith, obviously. He became one of the greatest saints that we've ever had, probably the most beloved saint, of course, and extremely popular. But he was peaceful in the sense that he led with love. Even though he was very strong and had his beliefs, he always led with love and was trying to be a good witness for the Lord and the Catholic Church. And most people associate him only with his central Italian hometown of Assisi, which is certainly important in his life and his formation. But there are so many other places that had an impact on Francis. He traveled all over Italy, okay? He traveled all over. He traveled to Tuscany. He traveled to Lazio. He went to Rome more than once and spent a lot of time in Rome in various places, praying and seeking the advice of others, and also seeking consult with the Pope and making sure that everything he was doing with the Friars Minor and the other orders that he began, that they were all fine with the Catholic Church, that he was not doing anything that would bring scandal or doing anything incorrectly according to the teachings. He had a desire to go to the Holy Land, but first he wanted to go to Egypt to pray with and for the Christian soldiers there who were battling in the Crusades. And he decided he also wanted to go to witness to the Sultan, a devout Muslim. And it was pretty incredible in terms of what happened between those two. Now, he did not convert the Sultan, but as a result of the conversation, the way he humbled himself, presented himself humbly, and engaged in a conversation, a loving conversation, talking about Christ, he left an impression on the Sultan, so much so that he sent him off and promised him safe passage to the Holy Land, which we know happened because the custos of the Holy Land are the Franciscans. That's why, because St. Francis was there. And the Sultan also gave him several gifts that are now actually behind glass in a huge reliquary in the main church above the tomb of St. Francis of Assisi, including a beautiful ivory horn that was given to St. Francis by the Sultan. This is all in my book, Italy, Shrines and Wonders, Volume 2, Discovering Sacred Spaces and Fascinating Places in the Life of St. Francis of Assisi. So given everything that's going on in the world, I thought it would be kind of cool to play a short scene, and Richard has this all queued up, from the film of 1961 about St. Francis of Assisi, starring Bradford Dillman as St. Francis and Dolores Hart, now Mother Dolores Hart, as St. Clare of Assisi. Now, this particular scene we're playing for you from that 1961 movie is actually from their version of this meeting between St. Francis and the Sultan. Please roll. Thank you very much, Richard.
Come, Christian.
We found him in the Sahara.
Now, if that man is not mad, he's a spy. Here is a gold coin. And tell Ali to kill him immediately. Take him! Out!
I'm the enemy of no man. The God of love sends me to speak with you, King of the East.
I am told you speak to animals, and they understand your words.
If they do, it is because I love them, as I love all God's creatures.
You love us too? Your enemies?
Of course.
This God you speak of, why did he send you to see me?
To reach your heart. Not with the sword, but with his love. Through the love in my heart.
All this love. You wish to surrender your armies?
They're not mine to surrender. I ask only for peace.
How can there be peace with no surrender?
If you would embrace the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, peace must follow.
I didn't learn your language to hear these insults. You wish to die?
I am prepared to die for peace.
You die a brave man, but you are not reasonable. You want me to worship your Christ, but I reply, you come to Mohammed. You embrace the faith of the great prophet of God. There also lies peace.
Order your servants to build a great fire. Let me and your priest enter its flames. Then God may show us whose is the greater faith.
My priests do not appear eager to submit to your test. However, I'll see to it that they accept your challenge. Have a fire built in front of the tent.
Oh, Sultan, I beg you, do not sacrifice me for this man's madness.
Allah has not been served well today. But fear in a few priests is not enough to prove that you are right.
Then I will enter the fire alone.
Have you no fear at all?
I fear only my sins. For if I should be burned to death, it would be due only to them. But if God protects me, you must admit that both his power and compassion are very great.
I would.
Then will you promise, both for yourself and for your people, that if I come out of this fire unharmed, you will embrace the faith of my God?
What is it that gives you such courage? Your faith or your blindness?
My faith in God's love.
Is it your God's great love that drives Christians to fight wars? To kill? To plunder and destroy? Do they deserve sacrifices such as yours?
If men were more perfect, they would need less compassion. God is not in the sword or in the taking of life, but in the giving of life. For he is love. God go with me.
Stop. Don't kill yourself. Return to your people in safety and tell the Christians that if they were all like you, I would not hesitate to kneel to your God. And if our peoples continue to pursue the ways of hate, then war upon war will return until we will become the destroyers of the world. Only Allah knows which of us is right. I will arrange a safe journey for you to the city of your Christ, Jerusalem. Stay there in peace. You have not made a Christian today, but you have made a true friend.
That is the first step. Peace be with you.
So what can we learn from this meeting between, especially today, this meeting between St. Francis and the Sultan? This meeting occurred in a context of both conflict and cultural exchange, but it offers us precedent for how Christians and Muslims can meet as equals and foster some mutual understanding. We'll be right back. Always great to have the dynamic Bill Donahue, president of the Catholic League. He is also a sociologist. He is also a well-known best-selling author, speaker, and a terrific writer who addresses, of course, issues of concern to all of us, especially in the Catholic Church. And Bill, before we get to our topic, that you have a terrific article, by the way, on your website at catholicleague.org regarding the attacks on fatherhood and nature. I want to talk about what's happening in our beloved New York City. You know that I'm an East Coast girl. You can take the girl out of Jersey, but you can't take Jersey and New York out of the girl. Right. I still have family there. You know, I was telling you about when we used to go back and visit my relatives. We'd always go to New York, have a Sabret's hot dog, go see a play or something. It was so moving and wonderful and fun. But unfortunately, that has changed dramatically. And how disappointing. The Knicks have this huge victory, the first time they win the championship since 1973. and then literally all hell breaks loose after the game, right?
Yeah, it was incredible. My office, as I'm speaking to you now, I'm looking out at Penn Station in Madison Square Garden. I'm literally across the street. They've turned my area into a war zone. When Trump was here a week ago today, they had the Secret Service in my building checking things out. They had barricades all over the place. I had to ask people, excuse me, I'm trying to get to the train station. You know, there is a train here. It's you know, we like having a good time. And while most people, I think, were okay, but it wasn't just a tiny few, as some people in the media are saying. No, it was more than that. And we only know about some of those people who have been arrested. I found it interesting that, of course, I have some Irish cop friends of mine. What a shocker that is. And they've told me that Mondani, of course, was back in his own neighborhood in Astoria, Queens last week, and he dropped by a bar to go in there and rah, rah, rah. He always insists on special police protection for himself. He did this when he was running. And he said to the cops, "Stay down the block. I don't want to look like the police are just watching for me." Now, he's not interested in having good police protection for the rest of us. At one time, he was in favor of defunding the police. He's changed his mind. But he likes to have it for himself. Look, they're going to have a ticker tape parade on Thursday. They're expecting millions to show up. They'll start at 10 a.m. Way downtown in Wall Street and going up Broadway to City Hall. What's going to happen once they disband from there around maybe 1 o'clock, because they're going to have some, keys to the city and that kind of stuff? I don't know. And are they going to wind up back here by my area or not? I don't know. And of course you've got tourists in and the like. And the people. The smoking dope is like it's constant. They're all over the place. These people are smacked out of their skulls. And I come in at 6:40 in the morning into Penn Station, and I see them at that hour. So there are some good things in New York, but there's some really ugly things too.
What does it say about the state of the city in terms of its leadership and what's happened over the last, 10, 15, 20 years, Bill?
Look, I remember going way back, everybody knows it was Giuliani who's the one who cleaned it up. Right. He inherited a mess from David Dinkins. Dinkins was incompetent, but I don't think he was a bad man. I just think he was incompetent. Giuliani took all of his ideas from the Manhattan Institute, the great urban think tank, and implemented policies which literally worked. He cleaned up Times Square. The crime rate declined precipitously. And by the way, there weren't an increase in civilian complaints against the cops during that same time. So people keep saying, well, you put the cops out there, you're going to get civilian complaints. No, they actually went down. He had Bill Bratton as the police commissioner. Bloomberg comes in. It's a holding pattern, basically, from what Giuliani did. And then de Blasio, the Marxist millionaire, he helped to destroy New York City. Adams comes in, and he's better, but he's loaded with nepotism. They got rid of him. We know about Andrew Cuomo and how he shot himself in the foot. Now we wind up with this guy here, a Marxist millionaire, who's going to preside over the 25th anniversary of what happened on 9/11. Here's the guy who has a harder time condemning Islamists than he does Islamophobics. So, yeah, we got our hands full here.
And so we are very hands full with so many different things. Of course, the issues in New York City, but also what we're seeing with the attacks on fatherhood. We're going into Father's Day this weekend, and I know you did, as I mentioned, that's one of the main reasons we brought you on, is to talk about the attacks on fatherhood. Although the good news is that Gay Pride seems to be this so-called Pride Month. We know as Catholics it's the month dedicated to the Sacred Heart. This seems to be going away at some levels. What do you think?
Well, the evidence is clear. I'm not saying that it's dissipating altogether. I am saying that the vector of change is going our way, meaning more toward family-friendly as opposed to radical individualism. A number of states now have decided we're going to call this Fidelity Month, Nuclear Family Month, right. Strong Families Month. They've canceled some of their parades in Tucson, Arizona, and in Long Beach, California. The Texas Rangers are celebrating Family Month. So yes, and of course between the World Cup and the 250th anniversary of America and the Nick victory, the whole Gay Pride Month has really been taken a back burner. And I would hope it's not just for these other competing interests, but that people come to an understanding that it's one thing to offer tolerance to groups. It's another thing to offer social affirmation for behavior. And I don't think enough people make those distinctions. Say, well, I don't want to be critical and judgmental and whatnot. Well, first of all, you are judgmental if you're not going to make a judgment. You can't escape it.
You're making a judgment not to say anything.
Absolutely. Yeah, no one's out there trying to persecute anybody, but we're simply saying that when it comes to sexual matters, that there's a certain degree of sexual reticence should be understood. We're not interested, whether you're straight or gay, in what you do in your private behavior. And so often in Gay Pride Month, that which is private there's an attempt to make it public.
Right.
And I don't want to get into extremes, but I have pictures of it in years past of some really ugly stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think it would have changed even more quickly had the media covered it accurately and showed, obviously they can only show so much on the evening news. They show a lot of violence and other things. I know I was in TV news for years. But if they showed even a little snippet of what these pride parades are like, I think things would have changed a lot earlier, a lot sooner, don't you think?
Well, I think so. And I think there's also a recognition. This is more anecdotal. I don't really have any hard evidence on it. I like to give you evidence, but that's the sociologist in me. I don't have the evidence here, but I do have anecdotal information. It does seem there's a number of middle-class gay guys have kind of found their way in our society. They got a job in sales, insurance, banking, wherever it might be, law, and they're okay with just being who they are without wearing it on their sleeve, without going to events, without getting involved in drag shows and exploiting children. They don't want anything to do with that. They feel like they've accomplished a certain degree of tolerance and respect from people, and that's fine. So the activist group, I think, is shrinking. They're still, because they are so committed and so passionate, they're not going to just go away altogether. But I do think that the most radical elements of that group tends to be smaller now than what it was, let's say, 10 years ago.
Yeah. When we come back, Bill, after the break, I want to talk about how important it is to lift up fathers versus attacking them. I was talking about this earlier with Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse, who has a whole campaign this month called Men Matter, which ties exactly into what you're discussing. And you know this as a sociologist. I mean, it's common sense, but you know this as a sociologist in terms of the role, the important role that fathers play in the lives of their children, male and female. And also, if we look at the prisons, how many stories did I do when I was a reporter? Would go to the prison, interview a defense attorney when their client was being, hauled away to jail. And you find out so much about the lack of structure in their lives. In prisons, a good majority of the people convicted of crimes, especially men, came from a fatherless background. So we'll talk about that and much more with our good friend Bill Donahue, president of the Catholic League, catholicleague.org. Check out his great material and books at the website. Bill is always full of great information and interesting stories and just a delight to talk to, and also very enlightening and encouraging, even though he gives us a reality of the situation, as a good New York Irishman would do. All right, so before we get into get back to the topic, this is the reporter in me. You piqued my curiosity. Something very big is happening next week that you're doing and paying for that will be celebrated in Times Square. Tell us about that before we return to the topic at hand.
Yes, starting a week from today on the 22nd, right through July the 5th, in Times Square, right across the street from Father Duffy Square, where people buy their Broadway tickets, between 46th and 47th Street, high above street level, on Broadway. It's going to flash 15 seconds of every minute. It'll say, "Happy birthday, USA, 250th anniversary." I don't have it right in front. I should have it right in front of me. Religious liberty is the foundational freedom. Defend our Judeo-Christian heritage. And I'm saying that last part, too, because so many people want to try to eviscerate that and erase the fact that it was a Judeo-Christian heritage is the foundational of our country. And if we don't celebrate religious liberty as the foundational freedom, then it doesn't make any sense, because the rest of our freedoms come from that First Amendment right. That's where it comes from. So that's going to be up there for 2 weeks, 15 seconds. It's a digital billboard. They'll flash that up with a background of the American flag, a Catholic League logo, and with all the people in town for the 250th anniversary and the World Cup. That's the reason I did this, because the number of people who see it, it's just astonishing. And let's have a shout out for religious liberty. That's why I did this.
Wow, that's awesome. You go, Bill. That's fantastic. So, any pushback when you how do you get these billboards with the messages on there? Whom do you contact?
We didn't get any pushback on this one. We did get pushback last Christmas when we wanted to say something about Christians, and they said if you could leave that word out of it, it would be okay.
Yeah, let's leave the word Christian out of Christmas.
I know.
That makes
so we said
sense.
No. We would not do that, but no, this one here has more of a subtle message too. Defend our Judeo-Christian heritage, because I am so tired of saying that that Christianity and our Jewish brothers had nothing to do with the founding of this country. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. And
go to Washington and do a tour, for crying out loud. Go to any one of the monuments. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah. So, and I hope Mandani sees this too, because
I was going to say, wow, he's going to have a heart attack.
He'll say, well, maybe you left us out. Yeah, we left out most people. That's why. Because we dealt with the people who founded this country. All right? So we're not going to invent people just to make you feel good.
Well, good for you and good for the Catholic League. We love the work that you do. That's why we have you on so often. Okay, so back to the Father's Day discussion. What do you think we can do in order to uplift fathers and get back to appreciating true masculinity?
Well, for one thing, I think mothers should feel more comfortable in bringing up their boys to be boys. I mean, I listen. There's, I used to work with a radical sociologist. And she said to me, Bill, I brought up my daughter to be a boy. I only gave her footballs and, play guns and this and that, and I wouldn't give her addresses and everything else. And I said, and I knew the girl, too. She had all kinds of problems, by the way, not suspecting. And she said, it all failed. She said she really wanted to be a girl. Why is it that people have a problem with nature and nature's God? That's what this is all about. That's what the whole transgender thing is about. People should be comfortable in their skin. Men and women are different. They're equal but different. I was asked the other day on Newsmax. They said, well, they had a guy in Canada was asking about what is a woman and what is a man, and the person got angry at them. I said, well, why is this so difficult to do? I said, a woman is the person who has XX chromosomes and who is singularly capable of giving birth. A man is a person who has XY chromosomes and cannot give birth. Can we start with that? That's biology 101. But people are angry because, see, as soon as I mention chromosomes, they get angry because that's in biology. They think everything is a social construct.
Right.
Well, chromosomes are not a social construct. It's a biological reality. But they keep trying to run from the idea that there are truisms, that there is a nature, and that there's nature's God. No, we should be let boys be boys, let girls be girls. If girls want to be a tomboy, nobody has a problem with that. But the idea that you're going to intentionally try to radically change a person from God's design, that's malicious. And it doesn't serve anybody. So I think we ought to celebrate fatherhood because the boys and the girls both need it, but I'm telling you, the boys need it more than anybody. I grew up in a fatherless home, and I was in all kinds of trouble. I didn't have the father in the home. I worked in Spanish Harlem with the black and the Puerto Rican kids. They didn't have a father in the home, but they listened to me and they respected me. Boys, in particular, need the father as an anchor when it comes to discipline, and you can't put it all on the mother. They do a magnificent job because the father is usually absent in a lot of these neighborhoods, but you need both. And I didn't say both parents. I didn't say two parents. I said you need a father and a mother, okay? I didn't say two parents.
Absolutely. What have you seen in your work and your research as a sociologist in terms of the fallout? You mentioned some of it, but I was mentioning some of the experiences I had in my days as a news reporter when I would interview and cover various crime stories, and it would come up that the person who was being charged did not have a father, came from a broken home, and was dealing with very difficult circumstances. What do you see in terms of those who do commit serious crimes or have other major issues in terms of a lack of father that's not present in the home?
Well, that would be the number one variable. There's no question about that. It's almost universal, and you see now an increasing amount of violence with these people who are transitioning. Whenever you start, look, nature said there's a father and a mother. Now, for all kinds of good reasons, and maybe not so good reasons, that's not always the case. But so you do the best that you can. But we know that stable families, I mean, I wrote a book not too long ago, and I looked at the people who succeeded the most in this country, and they were Jews and Mormons and Nigerians and Asians. Notice 2 of them are non-white, Nigerians and Asians. Now, what did all these 4 groups have in common? Why did they succeed in education and in the workplace? Because they had the one thing they had in common: stable families. They had fathers and mothers in almost every single case. So it's not a matter of saying, well, you know, the black family, this and that. Nigerians are black. They succeed. They're one of the most successful groups in America today. They outdo the Irish and the Italians easily. And the Asians do it. Guess who does the most homework? Asians. Because the parents work with the kids, etc. And Jews have succeeded so well. Mormons have a very strong family unit. Where you see the weak family, it was with the Irish, and then you saw it with African Americans. There's a reason why they call the paddy wagon, because they're named after St. Patrick and all the Irish. The Irish are known for the fatherless families, and they went into urban politics. They went into boxing. Guess who went into urban politics? Blacks. Guess who went into boxing? Well, you see so many different similarities between groups once you take a look at the demographics. So, yeah, we should be doing everything to strengthen the family, and not groups like Black Lives Matter, who said that was their goal to destroy the family. And they're on the side of blacks. No, the Klan would be the ones who would be with Black Lives Matter, saying, let's destroy the family. That's a Klan idea.
Yeah. Talking with Dr. Bill Donahue, CatholicLeague.org, on his recent column, Attacks on Fatherhood Are Attacks on Nature. So we know that we need to support men and women because, as you said, and as our church teaches us, we are created equally, but we're different. Okay, we're equal, but we're different in the eyes of God, every single person, male and female. What can we do this week when discussions come up, or how can we be positive in promoting fatherhood, do you think, Bill, leading into Father's Day?
Well, I think we can talk about the benefits. I think most people kind of know it instinctively. I just gave you some examples about the benefits of a stable family. I mean, it almost seems absurd in a way that we have to pair back to that to remind people that the children do best in our society, independent, has nothing to do with race. Children do best when they have a father and a mother in a home. We should be seeing more portrayals that are positive about that in radio and television, right, in the movies, and we don't. If anything, we often see them dissing the father, acting like as if anybody can take his place. They can't. The nuclear family is the bedrock, and once that breaks, that's why they call it a broken family.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even doing something as simple as maybe showing a picture of your kids with the dad, or, why you love your father, or maybe just posting something. And my father was very close to my father. I was actually closer to my father than my mother, even though I wrote the book about Rosie. That was very cathartic. My mom and I were very similar. It's why we went head to head a lot, but we loved each other. But I had a very, very strong relationship with my father. And you were talking earlier about, men who support women's rights. My father had 3 daughters, and he told us all to get an education. If we got married and decided to have children, that's wonderful. But he said, I want you to be able to take care of yourself. And, even when you're married, you can still work and raise a family. And he was my biggest cheerleader in terms of saying, if this is what you want to do, in terms of going into broadcasting, which is a tough business, as you know, he said, go ahead and do it. Put your best foot forward. And he was very, very, I would say, kind of a woman's liberator in his day and age, because when we were born, he would always argue with the doctors. He wanted to go into the operating room. Of course, back then they didn't let anybody else in but the doctors and the expectant mom. But I think you can be pro-women, pro-men, and not get extreme on these things, but have a healthy approach to feminine genius, as John Paul II said, and to true manhood.
Well, I think most people, most women probably are that way, but there's a certain amount of a sense of being intimidated, that somehow you're wearing it on your sleeve, you're being too triumphalist. No, this is the week to celebrate fatherhood. We had motherhood celebrated last month, but there is this animus against the idea that there's something rooted in biology, and a lot of it does come from radical elements, not the average gay, that's for certain. Radical elements of the gay community who are pushing this kind of agenda, radical feminists who hate patriarchy, even though it's universal. Stephen Goldberg, the sociologist of all people, wrote a wonderful book about the inevitability of patriarchy. It's women also
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it's slowly changing, and I think reality is coming out on top, and eventually the truth does surface. But we have to do our part, and that's why we're so grateful for you. What are you working on next? What's your next article going to be?
Well, we're working on a number of things relative to the July 4th. As I mentioned, the billboard coming up, but we have a number of different posts that we're talking about. I'm going to talk about slavery, since people don't want to. People think I was invented in this country, and we're going to talk about the reasons why people need to be proud of the 250th anniversary. I'm so tired of all the people debunking things. I have a piece out today debunking the debunkers, which I love to do.
I love that.
They're wondering, did George Washington really kneel in prayer in Valley Forge? Well, in fact, he did. It's the best knowledge that we have. And but there's a lot of people out there, the cynics, of course, they don't want us to celebrate, and they'll keep reminding us of the dark side. And I'll match the dark side of America, and there is one, to the dark side of any country in the history of the world. And you tell me who comes out on top.
Amen, brother. Keep it going, Bill. We love you. Thanks for all your great work, and we'll have you on again very soon, especially before the 4th of July. Bill Donahue from the Catholic League. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for listening, to Catholic Connection, hour number 2, EWTN Radio Extra. Hope you enjoyed it. Coming up tomorrow, very excited, we're bringing back Dr. John Cuddeback. If you remember, he's written a book about the importance of family and how we can bring them back together. Crucial topic, kind of continuing the discussion we had with Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse in the first hour, and of course Bill Donahue in the second hour. Fathers, family, what's also important, the nuclear family, but why we aren't actually doing that and what happens when you don't. And we were talking about this the last time, and we could spend so much time with him, and that's what we're going to do tomorrow. But this idea of being together but alone, what do I mean by that? Well, I talk about it in my very first book, Noise, which came out 18 years ago, for crying out loud, about how we were so involved in the media, and that was 2007, think about it, right? And we are all together in the house, but we're on our phones, we're on our computers, we're on the video games, and nobody is relating to one another. So he will bring us back to basics and help us as we move into the Father's Day weekend. And then we're going to go to the Shrine of Hansfield to talk more about adoration, and we'll also have an interview with Nicholas Sens on the importance of Catholic education. So it's going to be a great day, another great day here at Catholic Connection. And if you don't mind, I would appreciate it if you would say some prayers for the release of my latest book, which is happening tomorrow, Italy, Shrines and Wonders, Volume 2, Discovering Sacred Spaces and Fascinating Places in the Life of St. Francis of Assisi, published, by EWTN. Talk to you tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.